Candyman. Candyman.
Candyman.
Candyman.
Candyman.
Candyman.
Candyman.
Backlot 605. We're not going to risk it because we are here on our 100th episode of the Backlot 605 podcast. Here discussing the movie about the guy with candy. I can't say it one more time, otherwise Tony Todd will show up and gut me.
So what you're saying is we can't even say his name throughout the rest of the entire podcast because you just ruined it.
I just
took it 4 more times.
I just took 4 out of the 5, so we get 1 more, and I think we should probably save it for when we talk about the movie of the week, which is
that guy.
Candyman. I had to say it because not everybody watches this, and in podcast form, that just sounds bad. We'll take the risk.
Yeah.
If Tony Todd pops on this chat, I'm fine with it. But anyway,
if he pops up on this chat, we'd be like, sweet.
Yes, surprise guest, Mr. Tony Todd, here on our 100th episode. We'll go big for it. So let's just hope Tony shows up. Anyway, let's give some introductions. I am one of your hosts. I am Casey Kelderman.
I'm Brian Mensing.
And we are joined by Mr. Kiefer Sutherland's mullet.
What up, guys?
Mr. Sam Lenz. Sam, what's up, man?
Oh, not a whole lot. I watched this movie in prep last night, and I think it's part of the reason I got no sleep. So I love it.
Were you having Candyman nightmares?
No, but it creeped me out, man. It got under my skin. I hadn't watched this in a while. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, so hopefully you at least got an energy drink or something to drink during this 5-hour episode of the Backlot 605 podcast. The reason is it's going to be so long is, you know what? We're celebrating 100 episodes. Let's celebrate the best way we know how by talking some movie news, some box office, and we'll talk some Candyman too. So, yeah. Anyway,
we actually have some of that stuff to talk about this week.
There is a lot to talk about this week. But before we get to that, again, thank you all for listening. I hope you all had a fantastic last couple days. Last week, last month, we finished our 1980s fantasy series. This month, we are kicking off our Clive Barker series here for the month of October. So it's spooky season. Let's talk some spooky movies. That's what this came down to. And originally this came in part because the title of this episode, Candyman, was supposed to be getting its long-awaited 4th film, I guess, in the sequel. In
the franchise
series. Yeah.
Wait, there were 3?
There were 3.
Oh my gosh, I only thought there were 2.
Way to be the horror aficionado there, Sam.
Clearly Candyman isn't my franchise, I guess. I don't know.
We'll touch on those. But yeah, we're kicking off Clive Barker month here. And with that, October it's spooky season, and we're going to be talking spooky season movies all month long. But yeah, once again, one more thing we should plug here at the top. We have started a Patreon. So if you want to go check out our Patreon, go check out patreon.com/backlot605. We have some awesome tiers. We'll give some shout outs here at the end of the episode, and make sure Sam is pointing in the right place.
Yeah, we got to leave this up to Sam. See, it's not so easy, is it?
It's first time on the show, and we're putting all the pressure on him. But yeah, we're doing Clive Barker month in our $5 tiers this month. You get a bonus episode at the end of the month, which we will plug here, which is going to be Clive Barker's horrible film, Rawhead Rex. So that'll be at our $5 tier at the end of the month. But anyway,
good sales pitch. Worst film ever.
So if you want to watch and listen to me and Brian just bash on a movie, sign up for $5. I can rest assured that this will be sleepaway camp style bashing from Brian.
Oh shit!
But a top 20 movie of the 1980s, according to some. Spoilers. But yeah, let's jump into the box office results for this last week. And we had quite the surprise here towards the top of the box office. First of all, here at number 1 though is Tenet's the reigning king of the box office, $3.4 million for Christopher Nolan's Tenet.
I think you missed the numbers. It's 2.7.
Did it not? Oh my God, it didn't update. All right, get rid of that. Talk amongst yourselves.
Wait to be on top of your list there, Casey.
Hey, you know what? I had 7,000 news articles, and there we go, 2.7 million.
But still,
I was trying to help Nolan out because, God damn it, no one else is.
Right.
Because, Nolan wants to be the number one movie for the umpteenth week in a row. This is the only way Nolan's going to be able to be top of the box office for 2 months straight is you have to have a global pandemic to do so.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I was hoping our number 2 film was going to be giving Mr. Nolan a run for his money. But unfortunately, it was just a bit shy. At number 2 is the 2020 re-release of Disney's Hocus Pocus, $1.9 million, though. A very impressive weekend for Hocus Pocus, guys. That's a quite a big number for only being out 1 week and having it be a comeback. What do they call those? The comeback classics, or returning films to cinema.
The retro films, but it's the same thing though too. Is that it's the right time of year. Granted, I say that, and I'm thinking, even if it was June, they probably, if they did a mass release of this, they probably would still get almost 2 million anyway. If this would have been 2 months ago, but there's a huge cult fan following for this film, and I'm not surprised that this, banked almost $2 million. I mean, even the umpteenth re-release of Return of the Jedi, or not Return, Empire Strikes Back didn't even pull this much money in.
Yeah.
There's probably just as many Hocus Pocus fans as there are Star Wars fans in this world.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like Disney did not do a huge marketing push on Empire, whereas this was all over social media. Like Hocus Pocus coming back to theaters was it was made into a big deal, to the point where I was literally in line to see this movie, and it was Friday night, and I ended up not going just because of the sheer amount of people. It kind of freaked me out. We're still in we're still in the middle of this pandemic, and there were some rowdy teenagers in front of me, and I'm a grumpy old man. And so I bought some popcorn from the theater, and I went home and I watched it on Blu-ray. So
I'm still getting my Hocus Pocus in.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple things on this. One, I did have a chance to watch this in the theaters. It was just as great as I thought it was going to be up on the big screen. I also realized this is the first time I had ever seen the classic Disney logo that I grew up with on the big screen. As soon as that came up, I'm like, wait, that's the first time I've ever seen it up on the big screen, which was a very cool moment. But
that's awesome.
Let me go grab my walker.
But another thing with Hocus Pocus here at number 2 with 1.9 million, that's on half price tickets. Tickets are only, depending on where you're at, $3 to $5.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's insane.
Tenet is still at full price. So by these numbers, Hocus Pocus probably took in more eyes on the big screen this past weekend than Tenet did, which is a crazy thing to think about. But
I think if they would have gone regular full price for this, they easily would have been 4 million.
Yeah, they definitely would have, and would have topped the box office. I think it's just a number of circumstances are coming into place for a near 30-year-old movie to be at the number 2 at the box office. Yeah. Let's go on to number 3 then, which is The New Mutants, $1 million this past weekend. Who would have thought that New Mutants would still be in the top 5 almost 2 months later?
Pandemic.
I'm honestly surprised, even in the pandemic, from what I've heard, that it's still number 3. I've not heard great things about this. I still haven't made it. I think the reason for that is for the sake of a superhero movie. It's the closest we got. So, if you're looking at what's in the box office right now, the one thing we have going for us is, if you're looking at what we have for the top 5, they're all exponentially different from each other. Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to go see Tenet. So that's more likely one of the reasons why New Mutants is hanging on for as much as it is because it's completely different from Tenet. It's completely different from Hocus Pocus. It's different than, Fat Russell Crowe, that sort of thing. Like
Right.
it's
that counter programming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go to Mr. Fat Russell Crowe at number 4 with $847,000. The savior of cinema, obese Russell Crowe.
I will say this is as much as we may knock Russell Crowe, and having not have seen Unhinged yet, I can't argue. Russell Crowe is a great actor. Period. Regardless of what people will say, what he looks like.
With the way the box office is going, I mean, October is filling up with a lot of horror re-releases.
Sure.
If Unhinged is still in theaters in November, I think I'm going to go watch this in theaters.
Yeah. Oh, I totally would.
I'm getting back in the mood of I want to go to the theaters almost every weekend. I feel even going back in the last month or 2 or 3, I have felt very safe going back to theaters with the social distancing and the cleaning that has taken place. So I might end up seeing Fat Russell Crowe in theaters.
I might have to go with you on that one.
Number 5 is Infidel, still sticking around that top 5, $460,000. One question I will leave our box office on is, do you guys think more horror releases here in October, especially, it's spooky season, everybody wants to watch horror movies. Will we see more of them sneak into the top 5?
I think it's going to depend on what it is that we're talking about here, because I mean, over the weekend I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, and there's obviously it's nowhere near. I think it's going to highly depend on what the title is. I don't know if there is a title right now per se outside of Hocus Pocus, honestly, that could probably break these numbers like what they're doing.
I'll bring up one. A Nightmare Before Christmas.
Maybe.
Oh, that one could
same audience as Hocus Pocus, coming out about 2 weeks from now. I think that one easily cracks top 5.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll reach number 2 like Hocus Pocus, but we'll see.
Maybe.
It definitely could. But I mean, I went to Hocus Pocus and A Nightmare on Elm Street back to back, and there was at least 20 plus in Hocus Pocus on a Saturday night, and then a 9 o'clock screening on a Saturday night for Nightmare on Elm Street had over 30 people in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
which theater did you go to?
I went to the West Mall Theater.
Yeah. See, and when I went on that next day, and there was maybe 8 of us in there in the middle of the day.
That's also Sunday.
I know. I'm just saying.
The Lord's Day, Freddy's Day. Let's move on to the news. Brian, are you ready with the news? Are you ready for the news?
Am I ready for the news? I don't know. I was thirsty for a second there. All right. So first thing that we have here for us here is Barry Jenkins to direct the prequel sequel. Why do we have that? I thought it was just a sequel. Anyway, to The Lion King. I love the look on your face there, Sam.
Sam loves this news.
I have no judgment to this because, for one, I've never even gotten around to watching the quote unquote CGI remake of the first one. It's
a waste of time. It's an utter waste of time.
With which I've got no argument. Granted, at the same time, too, I want to be able to say, hey, I was able to experience that film, but being the fact that the first Lion King remake, real live action CGI film made as much money as it is, call me shocked that Disney says, hey, we're going to go with a sequel. So it was bound to happen.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily the sequel part that's really getting me.
Yeah.
It's the fact that the House of Mouse keeps taking these directors that have really cool, unique ideas, a strong voice, and then they put them through their Disney filter. And it's just, oh man, I'm getting every time I get Sam Raimi directing the Doctor Strange sequel. At first I was like, oh, that'll be cool, Sam Raimi. And then I thought, he's directing a Marvel. I love the Marvel movies, guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like Disney or any of their like franchises really allow for directors' distinct visions to typically come through. There's obvious exceptions like Taika Waititi, James Gunn, even Ryan Coogler to an extent. But it's just, oh man.
See, that's where I, for myself, for the sake of the Mouse House, is I would say there is that one exception where I think it's because in the MCU, Kevin Feige's got the basically the overall hand in everything. So that's where Taika is able to shine. That's where James Gunn is able to shine. That's where it's like maybe this is his weaseling in, hey, if I do The Lion King, I can get into doing one of the Marvel films, where he can actually shine some of that, Sometimes you got, I mean, Favreau is basically, he's got himself into Star Wars thanks to The Mandalorian, but he at first, got himself into Iron Man, So, I mean, it could be one of those things that says, if I do this, then I know I have this avenue, because look at Donald Glover. He's got the trifecta of being in every aspect that is, Marvel, Star Wars, and Disney, that sort of thing. So who knows? I mean, maybe this is the bad leading to the great.
Yeah, and it very well could be. I just when you bring up Favreau as like as an example, to me, like, Favreau's a great director, but he's a yes man director. You know what I mean?
I'll play a little devil's advocate with Mr. Favreau, because I think one thing he did was, I think his entire end game, if you will, with doing the Lion King was, hey, look, I can make a bunch of money and get in and make Disney a lot of money and get in good with them, and then they'll let me do whatever the hell I want with The Mandalorian.
That's fair. And he's done a great job with that.
That's where his voice is coming in on that end. Right. I feel like he's much more connected to that. But in this case,
and for the sake of The Mandalorian, not to get off topic, but they've released stuff for the upcoming season 2 at the end of the month here, and he's got 6 of the 10 scripts that are penned by him.
Yeah, and he's doing a great job with it. I don't know. I'm conflicted. I'll say that.
I'll pitch one more thing just to kind of play devil's advocate here again. I've not watched the quote unquote live action remake of The Lion King that Favreau did. I never plan on watching it because I've already seen the film apparently.
You have, but
on VHS many times. But I think the distinction that we can make here is that with Favreau, he is, like you said, he is in a way, he is kind of especially as of late, a yes man director. But he'll do these smaller projects too. But his voice seems very much like anybody could step in and make a Favreau film. But Barry Jenkins has a very distinct voice. Like, no one else can make a Barry Jenkins movie besides Barry Jenkins. And so I feel with this, where he won't be beholden to nostalgia of doing The Lion King again and having all the same shots, the same musical numbers, the same lines that we all love. He can actually do something different. And with it being like a prequel sequel, we don't have to make Simba's Pride again. That'd be fun. But there's a lot of directions that I'm hoping that they can go with this. And, I'm hoping that they learn from some of the biggest criticisms that I've heard of the Lion King remake was there was no emotion to the faces of the animals. You know what? Just say that was that movie. We're going to do our movie, and we're going to make them more animated this time around and more like the cartoon in that sense, where we can get emotions from these live action characters and creatures.
And in that case, just bring back the hand-drawn animation. You know what I mean?
You said it, and the first thing I thought of was how some of the animals looked in the Andy Serkis Mowgli.
I still haven't seen that.
To
watch it.
You're right, exactly. Where it's like they did the mocap for real human beings to put them on like a panther or something like that. This could go completely south. Like I
liked Mowgli quite a bit.
But you get what I'm saying, though. Like, I remember watching the trailer, and some of those animals just looked off. Like, I can understand, like, especially for the fact that they were going live action, quote unquote, that there is a loss of emotion because you can't make a freaking big old looking pig thing, grin, kind of thing. So hopefully we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, let's move on to the next piece of news that is going to tie into Disney quite marvelously.
How's that?
Not at all.
Okay, don't throw me off. I'm like, did you update the notes that I haven't seen the reflection here? All right, so I believe we talked about this last week, right? About it just getting announced and coming out of nowhere kind of thing. Is yes. Borat 2 not only is going to be a thing, I'm not even going to attempt to try to explain or try to say the actual title to this because it's like a Fiona Apple album. You didn't put it in the notes. I'm not even going to look it up. But Borat 2 is going straight to premium service. It's going to go to Amazon Prime, and it is going to be debuting on October 23. And I was hoping, if anything, what you're going to do is you were going to try to find the picture image that they did to solicit and promote the fact that it's going to be on Amazon Prime, Casey, because he definitely wants you to show that you need to be wearing your mask. So yes, Sacha Baron Cohen.
We'd get taken off YouTube if we put that.
Sacha Baron Cohen, yes, getting released October 23rd for Borat 2.
And you know what? We talked about Borat last week when we announced it, or we talked
that
about
it was even going to be a film.
And guess what? I watched it.
I know. Yeah, I've never seen the original Borat, but actually watching when the first Borat came out, I thought, oh my God, Sacha Baron Cohen, what is wrong with this individual? The only thing before that I knew was the Ali G show. And since what he's accomplished and he's done since then, really think this, and watching the trailer for Borat 2, I'm like, kind of want to go back and actually watch that for the very first time. Like I actually wanted to see this now. So yeah. he has changed me in my respect of what I feel is funny, I guess.
It's funny. Like, I've never seen the whole thing because it was one of those movies that like my parents just didn't want me. Like when it came out, I just wasn't supposed to see it. And
that
so
was
I'd like look
probably a movie you should have been watching.
Yeah, probably not. But what I'd do is I'd like go on YouTube and I'd find every clip from Borat that I could. So like I've seen most of the iconic scenes in it. I have no context for where they are in the grand scheme of the movie. So I'm looking forward to rewatching the first one and watching it for the first time in full. And then checking this out. But I'm gonna wait until after October because October is horror movie season. So
I literally went to go on to Just Watch to see where I could find the first Borat, which it is on Amazon Prime as well right now.
Rad.
But I went into Just Watch, and all I had to do was type B, and it was one of my preloaded options. Mm-hmm. People are looking for it.
Well, yeah, they definitely are. That's where I watched it. Was on Prime, and guys, it's very nice.
It's 14 years old.
That was a weird accent, but I loved the movie. I thought it was a blast. Again, I knew all the big lines from the movie already because I grew up I was about middle school when this came out. So yes, this was the movie everybody was quoting that should not have been watching Borat. I'm very excited for this sequel to see who they can lure in to be in Borat 2. And yes, there's definitely a reason for Borat 2 to be releasing October 23rd. Mm-hmm. Not like there's an election that they want to, parody a little bit here.
No, not at all. No, it's not purposely coming out just before that. No, not at all.
But this will be a nice break between all the horror movies of October to have some good laughs in here.
Okay, so
I'm still waiting until November, but yeah.
Here you go, Casey. Borat subsequent movie film delivery, a prodigious bribe to American regime for make benefit once glorious nation of Kakistan. Okay, on to the next thing.
All right.
Yes, the Craft sequel, Craft Legacy, is. I'm still not sure how I feel about this. Looks like it's going straight to premium VOD. Looks like it's releasing just before Halloween on October 28th. They did just release a brand new trailer for it. I I see how they're attempting to try to make it connected to the original one by, in the trailer, they even used literally a screen cap of Fruza Bulk from the first movie as part of a Polaroid that was just blatantly like just bad. Like, but it a lot of what I saw in the trailer looked like essentially a rehash of the very first film, to the point where like, what are we doing here? Like, I have a little spot in my place. Like, the first Craft was like, I think 96. Like, you know, it's been around a long time. It came out around about the same time as like the first Scream movies and whatnot. And hey, Kat, I don't know. I'm curious as to watch this. I don't know how I feel about it still yet, though.
Brian, let me ask you something.
Okay.
Are you a teenage girl? This movie isn't made for you. This movie isn't made for you. This movie is made for teenage girls. And in that respect, this movie looks dope. Okay?
So
Sam,
you're a teenage girl.
Sam, I'm not a teenage girl, and this movie is entirely made for me.
I'll just say this. In October, I like my pumpkin spice, I like my pumpkin pie, and I like my teenage witchcraft movies. And so I am absolutely 100% stoked for this. Just, I don't know. The trailer, I get all the problems people have with it. I understand that Blumhouse is kind of hit or miss. But I saw this trailer and I got super excited. Like, I will definitely be paying the $25 to buy it.
Yes, I will too. I'm
already at Sam's house.
I'm already planning my night for when this comes out. Much like a movie we'll talk in coming soon for this week. I'm going to be doing a Craft double feature October 28th that weekend. I will probably be like Sam, eat some pumpkin pie or some pumpkin bars and drink some pumpkin spice or apple cider while watching it. Yep. And maybe cast some spells too. I don't know, but
wear my UGG boots.
Yeah, why not? In my plaid scarf, you know, it's all gonna match. I love the first Craft movie, and when they announced this, I was stoked. We have not had a bad straight to DVD sequel to the Craft, so this is it. We finally get it. It's not going to be good, probably.
No,
I don't care. I really don't care. And in a year where we're hardly getting any new movies, give me the Craft sequel, please. I'll take it. Yeah. I'll pay the $20 to buy or rent this movie. I'm hoping it's not at the premium. I'm hoping it's not at the premium VOD price. I am hoping it's at the $9.99 price or $7.99. But either way, I'll end up watching it. But I'm excited for the Craft sequel.
Oh boy.
This cat is.
Oh, it heard witchcraft talk and had to join in.
Right.
She is my familiar.
All right. So on to the more, do we really need this in our lives kind of news here. Zac Efron is getting on the Universal Blumhouse train and is going to be in a remake of Firestarter.
Yes.
Again, I still don't know how I feel about this, only for the sheer fact that, like, I think of Firestarter, I think of a very young Drew Barrymore. Unless he's playing the dad of somebody who's going to be the Drew Barrymore character, like, what are we doing here? Like, how much are they changing the story to this?
I guarantee you he's going to be the dad.
I hope
so. Starting to branch out. Like, he's literally he's taking on roles that, you know, he's shedding the teen heartthrob thing. You know, you saw him poke fun at it in Neighbors. He did the Ted Bundy movie, and while that movie wasn't great, he was pretty damn good in it.
Right.
And I mean, I'm excited to see him play like Dad Efron. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be great.
And I hope that's the case. Yeah. Even to the point where maybe if they're using Zac Efron to kind of be the top billing, if you will, but then give us like the introducing of some unknown young actress who's going to take on the Drew Barrymore part that's going to absolutely crush it and give us the next Drew Barrymore for the next 30 years.
I think he should just play young Drew Barrymore in this movie.
He's like, I got the look.
Yeah, he can be in the E.T. sequel too as young Drew Barrymore. He should just take on all her young roles. Why not? He'll eventually die in Scream.
Don't even make up the words of E.T. remake or sequel or something like that, because
don't put that into the universe.
Yeah, don't make that a thing that people start picking up on, and then it gets retweeted. Nelson Spielberg's like, sure, why not?
Guys, it'll eventually happen. But back to the first time. So Firestarter. I've never actually seen this movie. But
how are you, the horror guy, never seen Firestarter?
I've never seen Firestarter. There's so many movies to watch. I've just not watched it. But
Stephen King nerd.
Yeah, but with all the and that's where I was getting to the King aspect of this is every King movie is either getting a sequel, a remake, finally getting an adaptation. We're getting all this King stuff again. It opened that door wide open by
literally
boatloads of money. Yeah, Dr. Sleep finally came out. We've had so many. Pet Sematary got a remake, so I think we'll continue to see the older King stuff from the 80s and 90s get a remake here eventually. Children of the Corn will probably get a 10th film or whatever it's at. So this is no surprise.
Start from scratch and actually do that one right, though.
Ooh. Well, they did do it right in the 80s. But yeah, I have no problem with Efron being in this, and I'm all for Dad Efron. I hope there is a musical number.
No, it's not. Knock it off.
There has to be. Oh, could you imagine a Firestarter musical starring Zac Efron?
They did it for Carrie. Why not Firestarter?
You make this reference, Alton. I'm at first my initial thought is, why are we going here? Just because he did High School Musical, and then immediately my brain started connecting the dots, and I kept telling myself, why did I want to have Christian Bale start singing and song and dance like Newsies while he was dressed up as Batman?
And Efron is no stranger to the musicals, though. Besides High School Musical, he's done Hairspray and Greatest Showman.
Hairspray is one of my favorite roles of his. I mean, he kills it in that movie. He's great.
Yeah, let's get some more Dad singing Efron.
Let's get some more cross-dressing
Dad Efron.
John Travolta.
I hope he gets a dad bod in this, though.
Oh,
yes.
God.
Drop the abs, get a dad bod.
All right. He won't do that. Let's move on. All right. So next thing we have here is Jamie Foxx in talks to reprise his role as Electro in the next third installment of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. Being that we're starting to open the gates and doors and the multiverse, if you will, in the MCU and whatnot. Hopefully maybe this means that they're starting to make those talks in the Spider-Man stuff, because Amy Pascal is going to be all for that. Maybe that's why maybe we'll see Andrew Garfield come back as his Spider-Man, maybe Tobey Maguire. I think this says a lot for what we might expect out of the next Spider-Man film from Sony.
I love this news.
Maybe they're just trying to fix what they did badly in the second Spider-Man.
I hate Jamie Foxx's Electro, but I love this news because of what you said. This opens the floodgates for the multiverse, especially within the Spider-Man movies. I think they've been wanting to do that for a while. They obviously had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was a massive hit. It's an Academy Award-winning film. They've teased it already with J.K. Simmons coming back as J. Jonah Jameson. Maybe we'll get to see two J. Jonahs going at it at some point. That'd be fun. But
there's only one Joe Jonas.
Yes, and
it's J.K. Simmons.
Well, yeah. But with this, I like that it's opening those floodgates to see some of the characters that we've seen in previous Spider-Man movies come back. Mm-hmm. Because on top of this, Kevin Feige loves Jamie Foxx's Electro for some reason. I don't know why. So I think he's been pushing.
Drop a hot take.
Okay.
Jamie Foxx's Electro is the best part of The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Get out of here.
No, it is so it's the Batman Forever thing. Like, I love Batman Forever because the villains are so over the top and cheesy, and that is why I love Jamie Foxx's Electro. It's Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. Like, it brings back those like cheesy 90s villains, and I love it. and I thought Far From Home was just not good. And so the fact that they're taking
horrible,
the third, the fact that they're taking the third Tom Holland movie and injecting some of that like zany, cheesy Jamie Foxx Electro, I'm like, that already sells me on the third Spider-Man movie that I really could have cared less about, honestly.
But here's my thought, though, is that there were things that were bad about his Electro, or not even necessarily just his Electro, but even the pre-Electro when he was the weird, nerdy guy kind of thing.
He wasn't well written.
No, he was not. But that's what I'm saying is maybe this is the opportunity for Sony to correct that ship. Hey, we realized that we completely botched this amazing, award-winning actor's performance. Let's give him the opportunity to do it right,
while still hamming it up and having fun with it.
Here's hoping.
Hopefully,
here's hoping.
And
I'm still waiting for the news to come out that Paul Giamatti's going to come back as Rhino.
Rhino.
I could do without that.
Yeah, I could too. But with this though, there was also rumors earlier this week before the Jamie Foxx stuff came out that Sony and Marvel were going to start working together a lot more going forward and start tying stuff together that Sony's been working on. I mean, we've seen already that Morbius will technically be in the Marvel universe. Michael Keaton's Vulture appeared at the end of that trailer. So I think we are setting up at least the multiverse or a more connective universe between the Spider-Man films. And I mean, as someone who grew up with the Tobey movies, like,
yes,
if Tobey can come back for one more run as an older Peter Parker, hell yes, give me that. Give him, one more shot at being Peter Parker and being a mentor to Tom Holland, and give Andrew Garfield a final proper send off for his Spider-Man. I thought he was tremendous as Spider-Man. I agree. I think that was something he always wanted to be in the MCU. Mm-hmm. Like during that time, he was clamoring to fight alongside the Avengers. So give him that chance now.
Well, I think
this is definitely the way to go with it.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate like tragedy of the Amazing Spider-Man movies is like Andrew Garfield wasn't bad by any means in those. I mean, he kind of killed it, and you could tell he was passionate about it. Like he was a Spider-Man fan as a kid. I mean, like the dude was all in, and they screwed it up for him. Like the studio screwed it up. And so to be able to see him, and especially like Tobey Maguire, it's like you said, Casey. I mean, that's extremely nostalgic for me. It was one of the first movies I got to see in the theaters, was the very first Spider-Man. And to see all three of them on screen together, I think that would be so cool. Yeah. I think it would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have Tobey Maguire do like the Jake Johnson version of Spider-Man from the multiverse, where he comes in, he's got the pot belly kind of thing going on. He's the one who's just spent.
Yep.
Well, right. I'll disagree, but yes, he needs to be in it.
Oh yeah. I'm just giving as an example of where you could potentially throw him in as an example, using the multiverse or Spider-Verse as kind of a jumping off point, if you will.
And that's another thing for Sony. They could take now all these live action Spider-Mans and put them in their animated Spider-Verse stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's no denying that Toby and Andrew and Tom Holland would be all for voicing the animated counterparts to their characters.
Oh yeah. Or you could even go one step further and bring in like Chris Pine or Jake Johnson into the live action universes. Even bring in Shameik Moore as Miles Morales. Yeah. And just, I think that would be so cool to like not only cross the live action into the animated Spider-Verse, but then to put the animated Spider-Verse into the live action. I think that would be awesome.
I officially want to see Chris Pine dressed up as Spider-Man now.
Right?
Or we could go full Roger Rabbit and they just show up animated in the live action.
No.
Get Zemeckis to direct it.
I'm all for it. Let's do it. But speaking of Robert Zemeckis.
Hey, damn it. Stop taking my transitions here, you jerk.
Let's do it. Let's talk about...
I'm working here.
Let's talk about some more witches.
Knock it off, you jerk. All right. So, yes, The Witches, the Robert Zemeckis remake of The Witches from early 90s, I forget when, is going to go straight to HBO Max on October 22nd. I was ecstatic. I like Bob Zemeckis. I like the Witches movie. Finally got a trailer for it. I'm on the fence a little bit. Bob Zemeckis can be hit or miss. But this will definitely be one of those ones that I will check out as soon as I absolutely can. I like Anne Hathaway in terms of, I think she was a fit for the type of character that they were trying to. Angelica Houston is a very hard person to try to replicate from the original one. And I think going the way they did with Anne Hathaway, I think is a nice way to bring this story to a new audience.
Are you saying Anne Hathaway is fit to be a witch?
Maybe.
From stuff I've heard behind the scenes, I think that's true. This trailer doesn't look great.
There's things about it, as somebody who's read the book when I was a kid. There's things about it like I know there's artistic license that was taken, but there was also from the original Witches film, there was a lot of artistic license that was taken as well. So I actually, to the point where I haven't read that book in decades now, to the point where it's like I almost want to kind of reread it to see which one is going which direction, because we can't use the Angelica Houston Witches to base off the differences of the Anne Hathaway one, because even the original is not proper to the book.
Yeah. And like I'm a massive Roald Dahl fan. I used to read all of his books, watch the movies. I mean, like, James and the Giant Peach, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory,
Matilda.
Yeah.
Hell
I mean, like his books are just ripe for film, honestly. And all of them have taken liberties, you know, but it's always captured the spirit of it. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched the Witches trailer, partially because I want to go into this one blind. And partially
not a bad idea.
Yeah. Partially because I don't have HBO Max because they aren't available. It isn't available on Roku yet. And I'm waiting for my free trial for when it comes to Roku. And then I've got an American Pickle. I've got I can't wait to see that. It kind of kills me that I haven't yet, but that and the Witches, and I've got a curiosity about the Snyder cut. It's not like, ooh, I gotta watch this, but yeah. So I'm excited for the Witches. I've never watched a Robert Zemeckis film that I didn't at least somewhat enjoy, and I haven't seen all of his stuff, but I'm a big fan of his work, and so I'm pretty excited to see what he does with this material.
Not to go on a complete Robert Zemeckis tangent here, and we got a lot of other news. I like Mr. Bob Zemeckis. I think he's a great director, definitely. But I think in the last few years he's definitely become fascinated with CGI. But I think he's 10 years behind his own fascination with CGI. Where I think he's trying to push the envelope of CGI, but it's already been pushed past that. So I don't know what he's trying to do. He feels like the opposite of James Cameron in a way, where Cameron is trying to do underwater CGI now and motion capture, and Zemeckis is still like, look, I can make mice on the big screen, and they don't have to be real mice. They're on a computer. It's like, yes, Bob, okay, go sit down. It's okay. We've done that before. The mice in this look worse than they do in the 90s Angelica Houston movie, and we have CGI technology to make them look like the damn lions in Lion King. Like, they should not look this terrible, and I think the production value looks really good in this movie. I don't know where we're going to end up with Anne Hathaway. I think, again, like we've talked about, or we will talk about with Candyman, there's some big shoes to fill in certain roles. I think Angelica Houston's, the main witch in that film is a very big role to fill. I don't know if Anne Hathaway is. That's just based on this trailer. So I will probably watch the movie. I will use my HBO free trial finally and watch The Witches. But unfortunately, the trailer just did not get me excited. I was very excited to have Zemeckis take on The Witches, but the trailer soured me a little bit.
If I may, in response to your Zemeckis hate,
I'm not hating Zemeckis.
At least okay, so at least Robert Zemeckis doesn't spend an entire 2 decades of his career working on 5 sequels that no one wants to one movie that just happened to be the highest grossing movie of all time, all the while slapping his name on mediocre sequels to movies that he made in the yesteryear. Zemeckis still has artistic integrity.
Well, I think both have their moments, but I will not defend I will not defend Cameron in that way at all. It was just an observation of what they're trying to do with the technology of CGI.
No, I get you. I'm just busting your balls.
Oh man!
Also, we already talked about his best film earlier in the show, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But yeah, let's move on.
Okay.
I hate those words, you son of a bitch.
It's his best movie.
No, it's like his second or third best, maybe.
Yeah. You leave Back to the Future out of this.
Okay, Castaway is a close second.
All right, moving on. So we had some nice updates to the release calendar, aka pretty much nothing new is going to be coming out. Even the ones that say they're still coming out in November, December, I think that's going to be on its way out, because we have No Time to Die and Dune have moved to next year. No Time to Die is moving into this spot where basically with a week or so of where Fast 9 was supposed to be. Call me shocked. Fast 9 did end up moving, but they moved exactly where I expected them to move to. Fast 9 was around the mid-April mark, because that's basically where they've been living for the last 4 or 5 sequels. They are moving over to Memorial Day weekend, where they basically started everything, so that way No Time to Die can have their time in April. Dune is getting pushed all the way back to late 2021. So we won't even be seeing that for another year. So I they're still talking about I saw where they were talking about Monster Hunter was supposed to be coming out end of December. Soul's still supposed to be coming out in November. I don't see that happening. I think we're basically done for the year. I think they're going to get moved as well. If Dune wasn't going to be able to make it for Christmas, there's no way Monster Hunter. Okay, maybe Monster Hunter does, because it's that little low bar one that they're not going to fill the seats for. So maybe, but I picture Soul, for example. I picture either Disney is going to push that back like they did Black Widow, or that's going to be the next premium type movie that they did like Mulan. So I guess we'll see.
If you ask me, at this point, it's almost, I think, just about any movie that's over $150 million budget is going to get pushed to next year. The ones that are under, probably, limited theatrical release, VOD, maybe the premium VOD. It all really depends, I mean, you got Blumhouse stuff coming out. Blumhouse is super low budget. It's low risk. Those you're probably going to be able to get similar to what they did with The Invisible Man and The Hunt when all of this started.
But wasn't Antebellum, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that not Blumhouse?
That's not Blumhouse. I think it's Universal though, isn't it?
I think
it's Universal, but it's not Blumhouse.
Okay, because
Universal has kind of been leading the charge of the premium VOD stuff this year too.
They really have.
I think a lot of their stuff will probably end up going that way if it's not a major blockbuster release. But
for Universal, isn't that basically just Bond and the Fast movies?
And Bond is MGM. Universal.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks to Derek's clarification for me, the only way Universal is involved is they're doing distribution internationally.
Oh, okay, that's where I was getting confused.
That's where, I know that, and MGM is going to put Bond wherever they know they can make the most money, because pretty much Bond is the only solid tentpole that MGM has that keeps their doors open.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. With No Time to Die moving again, I think this does no favors for Bond making any money at the box office. I think if it does come back full swing, it's it's just not going to make the money that they're hoping that this last outing for Daniel Craig will. And Dune, I think, has to just get out of the way of everything else. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think Dune, probably no matter where it's going to end up, is probably going to bomb, just because no one knows what Dune is. A lot of people know what Dune is, especially if you're in the movie space. You know what Dune is. But for the general audiences, the cast might bring them in, but I don't know if that is enough. It doesn't have a superhero name attached to it, or
it does. It has Aquaman.
It's not a superhero movie, though.
Yeah, I think
it's got Apocalypse.
I mean, you look at like Villeneuve's. I don't even know if that's how you say it. That's how I've always said it. If you look at his Blade Runner 2049, I mean that was a sequel to a very much beloved cult classic of the 80s, and that one bombed. So I really don't think that Dune has much of a shot of making buku bucks anyways. However, like No Time to Die, even if it makes huge money, they have started, stopped, and restarted the marketing for this movie so many times that it's a funnel of, it's a black hole for money. I mean, once it
actually hits the theater, people will be like, "Oh shit, it's out!"
Yeah.
Remember that Billie Eilish song that came out 7 years ago?
They literally just released the music video to that, and then 2 or 3 days later announced it wasn't coming out.
Yeah.
So
I think with 2021, we're done for probably new releases in theaters, unless it's something, like the smaller releases will probably end up going at least to theatrical and VOD at the same time. And I mean, I think some of them we'll talk about in the next few weeks, like Sam had mentioned, like something like Freaky will probably pull the trigger on doing the theatrical VOD release, much like Bill and Ted did.
And then we'll just have to go to the smaller theater because some of the big theaters won't play the dual release movies.
Well, speaking of those big theaters,
I know. Hey, look, you see where I'm going with this here. I can do transitions too, because on the heels of the No Time to Die release of information, Regal Theaters have decided to close all 543 U.S. theaters. With an expected release date of we don't know yet. I guess
with an expected release date of never. Not to be a pessimist, but I think we are seeing the expedited end of theater chains. At least I don't think theaters are going to the wayside, but theater chains such as Regal or AMC, unfortunately, maybe even the Cinemark, especially for us here in Sioux Falls. I think we're going to see a lot more of this going forward, especially since we said, 2 of the big releases for 2021 or 2020 yet were Bond and Dune. Wonder Woman is still slated for Christmas. Not
that
going to
ain't happening.
No.
So with that, I think a lot of theater chains are going to go the same route that Regal is. Maybe not close the theater entirely, but as we're seeing here in Sioux Falls, the East Side Cinemark Theater is only running Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I can see our West Side doing the same very soon. We're not a huge market already. And unfortunately, I could see it going, like in our area, I could see it being, we only have one Cinemark open on the weekends, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays at some point this year, unfortunately.
Well, and there has been, and Cinemark actually has already gone on record with the release of the news from Regal that at this point right now, they intend to be open, evaluating individual markets to figure out adjusted hours, or are they open up on certain days, because they themselves are also in the attempt of everything going on to keep the theater experience going. So I do give Cinemark, and luckily for us, being that we're the Cinemark market, that we at least have the advantage of, we have the theater chain that is not just closing everything up. So at least not all of the theater chains are just like the Regal here, where they're just like, nope, we're out. We haven't heard from AMC, which I imagine we might hear something here shortly. But the fact that Cinemark was on it right then and there to say, hey, you know what, guys, we know that there's a problem. They're working on with the studios about catalog stuff and whatnot, content that they can bring to the theaters to allow to be able to make sure that they can keep the doors running in some shape or fashion to be able to keep that experience going.
Yeah, I unfortunately. I'm trying to be a realist here because it sucks. This really sucks. And when I saw this news, I'm like, oh no, this is expediting things even faster.
Well, I thought the same thing too, and literally within a couple hours or maybe the next day, the Cinemark news popped up on my feed. So
I think that's a little bit of a PR move on their part. Say, well, we're not them.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think they will definitely hours are going to start shrinking. Days will start shrinking as well as we get more into no new films in theaters. I mean, they're still running on Tenet, which is almost 2 months old now, and yeah, that's how long can you run on the Tenet train? But I think. But with
new releases start getting those cheaper prices.
Here's a question to leave this off with: is all these movies are getting pushed back to 2021 for a theatrical release? What if there's no theaters to release them in? Because I don't know if I see Regal opening up again with them being closed. They'll be closed at least in another 6 months, probably at this point.
I guess we'll see.
That's are we going to see Disney buying up all these old Regal or AMC theaters and popping them up for a Mulan re-release and Black Widow and all the Disney releases? We could. I don't know.
And I hope that doesn't happen. I hope, optimistically, what happens is that we have a birth of independent exhibitions, like West Mall, like the State Theater, like, just the mom and pop theaters. Like when I was growing up, I was in a small town. Like we had a theater that was part of like a chain, but it was just a single screen theater that was at least locally owned and managed. It operated under a chain. And there's something special about going to a theater like that as opposed to a chain anyways. And I kind of hope that what we start seeing is those types of theaters maybe making a comeback. And, I don't know. Maybe that's optimistic, but I think it could happen.
I felt very optimistic going to West Mall this past weekend and seeing bigger crowds.
Really well, it looks like.
Bigger crowds at Hocus Pocus and A Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm hoping that continues for West Mall going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So we're only an hour into this. Let's get to coming soon. Oh, my gosh.
Are we even going to have time to talk about the man that's been standing behind me this whole time?
Oh, we're definitely talking some Candyman. But before we get to that, let's get to a different type of scary movie. Let's get into coming soon. So we have quite the list. We'll touch on each of these very quickly, and we'll kind of go through these because there's a lot to talk about. There's one of these that I'm really
excited for.
Yes. That was my terrible Adam Sandler. But that's how he talks. And
we killed Brian.
He's gone. Candyman is gone. He's gone.
Oh, Jesus.
We thought Tony Todd was going to show up, and Adam Sandler sneaks in.
I was lazy from groin to gut.
There's something that should have been brought to my attention yesterday.
Oh, just keep going.
We're going to keep going. Let's talk about, first up, what we have to talk about it because at least 2 out of the 3 of us are very excited for Adam Sandler's Hubie Halloween. Comes out this weekend on Netflix. It releases October 7th. This is Adam Sandler's latest Netflix movie. He plays Hubie, a resident of Salem, Massachusetts, who is bullied and mocked by everyone for obvious reasons, and who ends up
Hubie Dubois.
Hubie Dubois. And
And
it has to end up saving his hometown on Halloween night. He reunites with Julie Bowen from Happy Gilmore. It also stars his buddy Kevin James. It also has Maya Rudolph, Ray Liotta, Rob Schneider, Michael Chiklis, Kenan Thompson, Tim Meadows, Shaquille O'Neal.
And many more.
And probably many more.
Can I just say, like, aside from the fact that he's reteaming with Julie Bowen, which I was very excited for with this, this has a pretty, like, it's got your Sandler regulars. It's got, Rob Schneider, Kevin James, but and Tim Meadows, who's just hilarious in everything regardless. But like, you've got some newer, like, people who haven't necessarily played in the Sandler toy box yet.
This is
like,
Keenan's first Sandler too.
And like, his comedic timing in this trailer is fantastic. My favorite shot in the whole thing is when he answers the phone and you just hear, "Hello, officer, this is Huey Dubois," and he just immediately hangs up the phone. Like, it's simple, it's stupid, but it's amazing. Like, I'm very excited for this.
I won't lie if I didn't say that I am intrigued to watch this as much as Casey is giggling over there like a little schoolgirl.
Oh, I thought you were going to keep going.
No,
I'm
done.
I am so excited for this.
Oh, me too. It's
Sandler.
So
I was the big. I am the biggest Sandler fan. I love everything Sandler does, but unfortunately, most of the stuff he's done in the last 10 years has been horrible, garbage.
Yeah.
But he knows it, and I think in the last year during his press for Uncut Gems, like, he's proved to me, like, okay, I don't care what you do. You fully explained to me why you do the garbage that you do. You get to hang out with your friends and go on vacation and make stupid movies and make the stupid face all the time, and it's fun. And that's all I'm expecting out of this. I'm expecting to laugh out of sheer stupidity out of this movie.
Well, and it's like our Slash Lot co-host Blake Ginnathan said. It looks like they actually hired a cinematographer for this movie. Like, it is surprisingly shot really well from what I've seen in this trailer.
They took all the good shots and put them in the trailer, Sam.
Maybe, but you know what? Those are better shots than what we've seen in most Sandler movies.
And it's also, he's not going on vacation in this. He's not on a tropical island. So, maybe we can expect something great out of this. Probably not, but we could.
He took a Sam Lenz type of vacation and went to Salem, Massachusetts.
He decided, he's like, I want to go to Upper New England. So maybe it is another vacation. You can't go to Hawaii every year. When you can go to Hawaii every year, then it just gets boring. So you got to try something new. So, but I will point out that you made the comment about, making movies with his friends kind of thing. That does give me a different appreciation for the films. Yeah. It's kind of the same aspect of, people give me shit about like Kevin Smith movies. By all means, they're not great, but he's in that respect of, I'm making the movies for me. I'm making the movies for the movies I want to make. And you know what? If that's the Adam Sandler code of making movies as well, I'm making movies with my friends. I'm making the movies that I want to make. More power to him. I may or may not like them or whatnot, but I respect that. If you get to get paid to do what it is that how you want to do it, go all in.
Right.
So, speaking of terrible comedies, next up we have The War with Grandpa, starring Robert De Niro. Uma Thurman, Rob Riggle. Why are they in this movie? This will be a theatrical release, releasing October 9th. It is our first major theatrical release in about a month. It is a family film that was originally part, apparently, of the Weinstein Company before that happened. A young boy finds out that his grandpa is moving into his family's house and is taking over his bedroom. This leads to a prank war between the grandfather and his grandson, with the grandfather obviously played by Mr. Bob De Niro. It also co-stars Christopher Walken, Rob Riggle, Cheech Marin, and Uma Thurman. Guys, this movie looks garbage.
I haven't watched the trailer. But
I'll put it this way, just for the sake of Bob De Niro, is it looks like he's gotten to the point where he's like, you know what? I'm too old to do what I used to do, but I'm old enough where I've made enough money in my life. I can do whatever the hell I want. And it's phone in De Niro from like here on out.
Except for the outlying like stuff like The Irishman. But here's what I'll say, guys.
Even the Irishman, though, he's basically, he's done the Italian mobster how many times? He could do that in his sleep.
But I don't know. I think he brought something different to that movie. But we won't get into that. This isn't a podcast about the Irishman. This is a podcast about Robert De Niro.
This will be as long as the Irishman, the way we're going.
Comedies. This is confession time. I liked and actually own Dirty Grandpa with him and Zac Efron. I don't know what it is about that movie, but it makes me laugh. It's awful. It's horrendous. And I'm kind of hoping, I haven't watched the trailer for this one, but I'm kind of hoping, I know it's a family one, but I hope it's a family-friendly version of that movie.
Maybe this will pitch you something here, Sam. It is directed by the acclaimed director of Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Okay, so that gets me a little less excited.
As it should.
How I picture this, Sam, is Dirty Grandpa meets Home Alone.
That's actually pretty much what the movie is.
Okay, I'm in. I don't care.
Also with Christopher Walken and Cheech Marin teaming up with Bob De Niro to do pranks to a bunch of little kids.
Let's forget the fact that you haven't even brought up Jane Seymour.
Guys.
Jane Seymour's in this?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going opening night. Like, you will see me at West Mall buying tickets and popcorn.
All right, let's move on. We have a lot to get through on these. We'll run through the next ones quite quickly, and if you guys have any you want me to stop on, we'll talk about them. But next up, we have Charm City Kings, which is an HBO Max original. Comes out October 8th. It is a Sundance hit about a 14-year-old Baltimore kid who wants to join a dirt bike club that his older brother was in before his tragic death. It is directed by
fun and lighthearted.
Yeah, obviously Angel Manuel Soto. It is produced by the Smiths, Will and Jada, and Barry Jenkins, who we talked about earlier in the show, has a co-writing credit for this movie. So again, HBO Max original, Charm City Kings. The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which is a premium VOD movie, comes out October 9th. It is the second feature film from acclaimed actor, writer, director Jim Cummings, with his first being Thunder Road. He plays a small town sheriff who investigates a series of murders that appear to be caused by werewolves.
Ooh.
Yeah, so a werewolf movie coming out. Yeah. I've not watched Thunder Road yet. I've heard nothing but great things about it.
Yeah, I've heard that's good.
Part of me is like, you would, if you had me at Amazon Prime or HBO Max or Hulu or something like that, I'd probably be all over this. I hear like premium VOD. I'm like,
I don't think this will be a premium VOD one. I think it's probably the lower price point.
$6.99 type of rental.
Yeah. Next up, also on VOD and also hitting Blu-ray the same week is The Doorman. This stars Ruby Rose, who plays an ex-Marine turned high-rise doorman who takes on a group of art thieves. This is put on here by our one of our contributing writers, Mr. Derek Fearing, because it is directed by the director of The Midnight Meat Train, which we will be covering in a few weeks.
Shit.
From the short story by Mr. Clive Barker.
I'll really quick just say is I'm curious about this movie because there's aspects of Ruby Rose I really dig, but it does look like Jean Reno is kind of phoning it in, so I think it's like a 50-50 at this point.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mr. Clive Barker, we are getting a horror anthology film inspired by his short stories by the name of Books of Blood.
This is why we're doing this whole series, is because of Books of Blood. Yeah, show the picture. There you go.
Because of this right here. This is a Hulu original.
Read for this.
Yeah, I did learn how. This is a Hulu original film. It is based on many of the short stories by Clive Barker, featured in his Books of Blood books. So I'm very excited for this. I'm excited to check this out, and I'll probably talk about it at some point during this miniseries, since this is the reason we are keeping the miniseries still alive. That Books of Blood is also out this month.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, one that maybe can only be topped by Hubie Halloween for me and Sam's excitement, which is Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo, which hits VOD and DVD on October 6th. This is the very first Scooby-Doo Halloween movie, and I'm stoked for this. Me and Sam have both watched this already.
Yes, this movie is so dope.
We loved it. Yeah. It also stars Elvira, Bill Nye, and Scarecrow from the Batman.
Yep. This just confirmed everything that I've believed in Elvira, which is she should be in everything. She's fantastic in this.
I do like the fact that in the notes here that we have Matthew Lillard is back as Shaggy, as God intended.
Yes.
That is amazing. I love that. But I do have my question.
It is nice.
Here. Yeah. It says Elvira and Bill Nye. Are we talking vampire Shaun of the Dead Bill Nye, or are we talking the science guy?
We're talking the science guy, obviously.
The science guy.
And he's in him and Elvira are in the movie. They in the entire
characters.
Thing.
They are main characters. It's awesome.
Scarecrow is the villain of the movie. It's awesome. I love this movie.
The relationship between Daphne and Elvira is
great.
My absolute favorite part of the whole movie. It's fantastic.
Yes, so that is Mad Max Scooby-Doo. Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo, VOD and DVD on October 6th. Oh my, we have quite the list here, guys. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, who put this list together?
Derek did. This is quite a list, but let's run through them. The 40-year-old version. Not the 40-year-old virgin. This is a Netflix original film because that comes out October 6th, or excuse me, October 9th. A struggling 40-year-old New York playwright decides to reinvent herself as a rapper. So this is starring and starring, co-written, and directed by Rada Blank. So a movie to check out here on Netflix this upcoming weekend.
That sounds very good, actually.
Let's jump into the Blumhouse world again. This is part of their 8-film Welcome to the Blumhouse series on Amazon Prime. This comes out October 6th, which is The Lie. It stars Joey King, teen idol of such acclaimed films as The Kissing Booth. When a teenage girl impulsively kills her best friend, her parents try to cover it up.
I'm stoked for this. I think it'll be cool. I'm pretty much in on just about anything Blumhouse does.
Yeah, so. I think I still got to catch up on their Hulu
I
Blumhouse movies and to add 8 more of these. Oh my gosh. But yeah, the next one is also a part of that Welcome to Blumhouse series on Amazon Prime. This is Black Box. A single dad loses his wife in a car accident, then undergoes an experimental treatment that causes him to question his identity. So we're getting some horror definitely here in the month of October, and we're going to keep it going on our favorite horror streaming service, Shudder. Yay. Shudder.
Woo, Shudder.
The Cleansing Hour, which is a Shudder original film, October 8th. 2 guys who host a webcast in which they show fake and elaborately staged exorcisms are in for a rude awakening when their latest guest, one of the guy's fiancés, is actually possessed.
That sounds fun.
That does sound fun. But next up, did you guys want to touch on any of those? Are you guys excited for anything there before we run into our re-releases in theaters?
Meh.
There's a lot there that sounds fun.
I think it's definitely a full weekend of movies to be watched. Then we do have the films that are coming back to theaters for release. First up is Disney and Pixar's Coco, which returns to theaters October 9th.
So if you want to be depressed and cry in a theater, that's your thing.
I already did it once. I don't need to do it again.
Yeah.
It is a great film. I always say that.
It is. It's fantastic.
If one hasn't seen it in the theater, I would recommend going to see it in the theater because it's bright, it's beautiful, it's an amazing film.
I think it's Pixar's best. It's not my favorite, but I think it's their best.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely put it top 3.
Mm-hmm. Next up is a movie that made our Arnie and Sly countdown, which is Total Recall.
Total Recall.
See you at the Party, Richter. This comes to theaters October 10th and 13th for a special 30th anniversary Fathom Events presentation. This is presented in its new 4K restoration.
Mm-hmm.
So if I did not watch that about a month ago, I would definitely be there, but I just rewatched it. So
way to go.
Total Recall, fantastic film.
Very much so.
But next up is one I will definitely be seeing in the theaters, which is Alfred Hitchcock's classic Psycho, which hits theaters October 11th and 12th. This is part of a TCM Fathom Event's 60th anniversary screening of the Hitchcock classic Psycho. So I'm very excited to watch this on the big screen. This is an all-timer for many, many, many reasons, and to see this on the big screen will be quite an experience.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be there. I put that as soon as they announced it. I put the notification in my phone so I wouldn't just forget.
Don't forget.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm already planning one of the Psycho ripoffs to watch this Wednesday as this is dropping, Friday the 13th. So I will definitely be back in the theaters to listen watch the classic Psycho on the big screen. And if you have not ever watched Psycho, go out this weekend and watch Psycho on the big screen.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that is it for coming soon. If you want to check out anything else coming soon or want more detail and trailers on everything that we just talked about here in the last 75 minutes.
It only took us the entire length of a movie to get through all that.
Just about. Go check out our coming soon article now on backlot605.com. But we're gonna take a break. We're gonna go stare into a mirror and say Candyman 5 times so he may appear on the other half of this break. Hello there, boys and ghouls. This is Casey here again, just giving you a quick little plug for our upcoming horror-themed show, Lot 605. This is our brand new horror show that will be replacing the Killer Countdown, and this will be more of a discussion-based show hosted alongside myself, Mr. Blake Ginnathan, and Sam Lenz. So again, that kicks off here at the end of the month, and we'll let you know on our social medias as soon as that podcast drops and the feed is up. Until then, keep on spooking.
What the shit?
That was if Adam Sandler played Candyman, but fortunately for us, he did not. Instead, it was Mr. Tony Todd, who, Tony Todd stars in Candyman from 1992, kicking off our Clive Barker series for the month of October. We are talking about the 1992 horror classic, directed by Bernard Rose. It is written by Clive, or it is based on the Forbidden by Clive Barker, which is in part of his Books of Blood series. It's part of the 5th volume of that. It is also written by Bernard Rose, stars Virginia Madsen and Mr. Tony Todd.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know the story of Candyman, it is about a college grad student who is researching the myth in
the urban myth.
Yeah, the myth of the Candyman in the what I just had the name of it. Is it Cabrini?
Yeah.
Cabrini Green of Chicago, and it is about this creature that if you say his name 5 times into a mirror, he will appear and kill you, much like the Bloody Mary legend. And he has a hook for a hand and bees coming out of his mouth and chest. And so basically she finds out that this myth may not be a myth after all. It may be more reality than anything else. So Candyman, Brian, this was your first time watching. This was a rewatch for me and Sam.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start off then with our guest here, Sam Lenz. You've seen this film before. Do you remember the first time that you watched Candyman?
So I have a weird relationship with Candyman because it was one of those that when I first started getting into horror, it was one that interested me. The premise was a little different, and I thought Tony Todd was terrifying, and so it was one of those that I looked up on YouTube a lot, watched clips from, and then I got to a point where I watched the movie, early high school, and it freaked me the fuck out, hardcore.
You get one.
I was, yeah, sorry.
There goes our PG-13 rating.
No, we've only had one. That's fine.
Exactly. Way to burn it, Sam.
It was terrifying to me. And the thing that I remember the most was the bee kiss. To me, and I hadn't watched it since. To me, this whole movie, the bees were the freakiest thing. And upon rewatching it I was really surprised at how little bees are featured in this movie, but how big of an impression that made on me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I love this movie. Like I rewatched it, and I mean I rented it to rewatch it, but I think I'm gonna buy the Scream Factory Blu-ray to add to my collection. Like that's how much I like this one. It's fantastic. Yeah. So this movie is just insane. And once again, it got under my skin, and it was hard to fall asleep last night.
Yeah, I think Candyman is one of those that gets lumped in with the Freddy, the Jason, the Michael Myers, but it is a very different film than those. I would still classify it as this is a slasher movie.
Yeah, 100%.
And I hate to say this, especially as a horror fan, this is a classy slasher movie, though.
It is, yeah.
And for me, I think Candyman is one of the greatest horror movies of all time. I think it's one of the best of the 90s, easily. I think it's probably top three of that decade. I mean, off the top of my head, Silence of the Lambs and Scream are the two big other ones from the 90s that come to mind. And this fits in perfectly with that. And man, there's so many great performances in this. I mean, our two leads, Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen, are astounding in this movie. Especially when we talk about horror in general, and like even like the final girl Image, Virginia Madsen is never brought up in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in a way Candyman itself transcends the idea of like the final girl, because when we think of it, we think of the masked serial killers and like defeating them and like horny teenagers and all the tropes of horror movies. This has none of that.
Yeah, this eschews all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean we're talking Clive Barker movies, and I mean when people talk about Barker movies, this isn't one they necessarily associate with him too much, like they do Hellraiser or Nightbreed, or
Midnight
Meat Train. But Candyman is my favorite Barker movie. And that's kind of taking the Barker out of it. I mean, there's definitely some of the Barker aspects in this as well, especially the overt sexual overtones between Candyman and Virginia Madsen's character. I think there's a lot of that in this movie. And yeah, Brian, what about you? This is the first time you have experienced the nightmare fuel that is Candyman. What was your overall thoughts of the movie?
I want to know why Sam couldn't sleep last night.
I genuinely, I don't know. Tony Todd's performance in this just gets to me.
I will say this. I will not argue the performance of those two individuals. I think they put on a very great performance. I don't think anybody other than Tony Todd can play Candyman. By all means, that it's in the same respect of nobody could play Candyman just like, nobody can play Freddy Krueger like Robert Englund did, that sort of thing. The fact that there is a face or there is a persona to this character, I think they're very irreplaceable. I am kind of curious as to see how obviously this new version of Candyman will take place in this ecoverse that is Candyman. That being aside, I will place this above my love-hate relationship with the Friday the 13th, but I was bored.
Get out of here.
Come on. I legit paused the film just to see what my runtime was. The fact that I was almost 50 minutes into this film, and I'm like, all it is just basically talk of the character. You haven't seen the character yet. You don't basically see the title character until almost an hour into the film.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
To the fact that, like you made mention about the bees and the hook and all this stuff, the things that make Candyman who Candyman is, none of that is prevalent for the first half of the film.
I think the first half of this movie is astounding. I love everything leading up to. So when we get to the reveal of Candyman, that's a tremendous reveal of him in the parking garage. And just when you finally hear Tony's voice, just Helen, just the way, it's so great. But everything leading up to that, where it's Helen investigating the Candyman myth and what that all means to the people that live in Cabrini Green and are a part of that community, and how someone is using the name of Candyman to invoke fear into people. And
but at the same time too, we're setting up stuff at the beginning of the film that was completely pointless and useless for the sake of the husband that is being unfaithful with one of his students. Like, there's aspects of it that were just pointless.
That totally pays off in the final sequence.
I was about to say the final scene is a payoff of that. I mean, the first half of this movie, they use socioeconomic and racial tension so well, to the point where you're scared for these characters in a totally different way. I mean, the scenes where she's going through the projects, taking pictures of the camera. There are some really, really well done jump scares in the first half of this movie. Like, it got me a couple different times. And you're right, Candyman doesn't show up, but the tension that comes with Candyman, to me, is prevalent throughout this movie. I love the first half of this movie. I didn't even realize how late it was in the movie, like, until you just said it. I didn't realize how late it was when the Candyman reveal happens. To me, this movie flew by, to the point where, like, it ended and I was like, I want more. Like, I could have watched, I don't know.
You have two sequels to watch, Sam, that you could have watched more.
I know. Now I'm like really wanting to. One
sequel, so much that he didn't even know it even existed.
To be fair, not a lot of people did. So when this movie, the opening of the film alone, over the opening credits, where it's just a shot over top of Chicago, is iconic. The score for this movie is incredible throughout the film. It is a perfect horror score. It adds such an ominous tone to this movie, but it also is. It's very ominous, but it's also very romantic too.
Yeah,
it toes that line very well.
It's so unique. That was the first thing that really, the opening credits. The first thing, like, Maria was in the kitchen making supper, and I was like, are you hearing this? Like, are you hearing this score right now? And she's like, yeah, this is great. I mean, the music in this is unreal.
Yeah, and I love her exploring everything about the myth of Candyman, exploring Cabrini Green, and I mean the relationship that she sort of builds throughout this movie with the young man who lives there, and knows that if he says the name Candyman or rats him out, he's in trouble. And he's not really afraid of the myth of Candyman. He's afraid of the real guy running around that place as Candyman. And I think that the whole idea of Candyman in this movie, especially when it leads to the myth of Candyman and then the real, like, gang leader Candyman, is very interesting to look at how someone uses this mythological figure to invoke fear in others for his own gain. And I think that's a perfect way to set this movie up. And it also sets up what Sam says. It sets up like this, like, socio-economical aspect of this movie, where it looks at, like, even like how the apartments between the two, between the what did they call it? The Cabrini Green, but what's that?
Right. Well, between unit to unit, how to be able to get
and then the one that Helen lives in, it's the same apartment building, but it's just where it is and who occupies it defines it. And that's such an interesting aspect to look at. And when we get to the reveal of in the bathroom, when she goes to explore the Candyman myth in that bathroom where that young man was killed, and is surrounded by that gang, and the I guess the real life, the gang Candyman shows up, and they beat her up, and then they eventually catch the guy. That's also a very prevalent thing that's still around today, because she even makes note of it. Like, how messed up is it that nothing happens to catch this guy, even though they've had their eyes on him for many years, until a white woman gets beat up by him?
Yep.
Like, there's so many different aspects about this. Is so much more than a horror movie. It's a real.
I will definitely give you that for the sake of the social commentary that is very prevalent in this film. It definitely screams to the fact that you have the exact same building in two different locales within the city, but because of basically the skyline and its location, to the fact that you can have, a very rundown building, and then the next one is in pristine, perfect condition because they actually gave it the love and attention it deserved, sort of thing. So, I mean, you can definitely see that aspect of the film, and I can't argue the like I said, the social commentary that is involved with this film, because, I mean, outside of that, I mean, even if you leave it in the horror genre, your typical villain, even Pinhead for that matter, Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, they're, Michael, they're all white guys. The fact that you finally can have a African American, supernatural horror villain, and one played as well as it is with Tony Todd.
Yeah, this movie's huge as far as representation in horror goes, honestly. Mm-hmm. I mean, that alone...
And that's where, with me, like, maybe for the fact that I'm not in love with this movie as you two are, but the fact that this, for me, has such a opportunity to be that representation in this kind of genre where, the genre is the African American guy is the guy that gets killed off first in every, horror movie. That sort of thing, is that this is a prime example of one that representation should be better executed, in my mind, is the fact that we have use that outlet. And there's something about it that I don't feel hit 100% like it should have.
Fair enough.
Fair.
But I think
That's fair.
but there's one thing in this where I think it's also very much, it's touching on a lot of different things though too. Because we are talking about, racial inequality or even socioeconomical inequality in a city like Chicago, but it's also touching on different themes, such as like gender equality. Because even in one scene where she's mentioning, actually at this scene here where they're talking about the myth of Candyman, and her colleagues laugh at her. Because they think they've already done it, and they don't overtly say, well, you can't do it because you're a woman, but that is definitely a tone that is in there.
And they basically do, because they're like, well, if you want to know about it, just read the paper that I wrote, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They say it without necessarily saying it. And that's one of those things, for the sake of representation, whatever the case is this, granted, we're also talking about the early 90s, and it was a different time, essentially, back then, but it's the fact that it's like, instead of it just kind of low-key throwing it in there kind of thing, no, put it right to the forefront and be like, hey, you know what, no, this is what we should be doing, because there's the strong women that should be able to do it because they can, kind of thing.
Well, and that's my problem with many movies today. It's they present the idea of a strong woman as they're already a strong woman no matter what they do. Obviously, the one everybody has pointed to and many times in the last few years was Rey in the latest Star Wars movies, where, well, she's already all powerful and doesn't learn a lesson throughout the movies. And I think this is a very different theme from that, because this character goes through a lot of struggles throughout this movie and has to deal with a lot of different aspects going on. I mean, if you look at this, she starts off with just exploring this urban legend, gets messed up with the Candyman gang. Then Candyman shows up to wreak havoc on her. And then it turns out that she's mixed up in a couple of murder scenes that she is blamed for. So she's going through a lot in this movie. And again, played marvelously by Virginia Madsen. I think she's just tremendous in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the way up until that final scene, she's all in.
Mm-hmm. There is a lot of things that I kind of want to touch on here, because I mean we brought it up earlier, like her marital affair with her husband, who is cheating on her with a younger colleague at work, and is very distant in this movie. And I think that leads into some of the Barker aspects where he likes to touch on relationships in his work. But in this, it's a very interesting look at that because she's kind of oblivious to it until it's blatantly thrown in her face in the third act of the film. But then there also is this definite sexual tension between her and Candyman in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Where she might not be reciprocating it completely or going along with what he is doing, but there's definitely some tension between the two.
Yeah, 100%.
But I love this film. I think this is an all-timer in so many different ways, and it touches on so many different things in this movie.
Yeah, this movie just I can't even begin to sing the praises. Like, I'm a little upset that it took me this long to rewatch it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's, man, I was blown away. Even, I mean, when I texted you, like, I'm watching this and damn, this is awesome. That was only about a half an hour into this movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, it hooked me from the get-go. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, I hadn't watched this in probably 2 or 3 years for sure. But yeah, I'm so glad I fit in a rewatch for this. I think this is definitely an all-timer of the genre, and one that's the social tones that it's going for still holds up to this day. Like, that's why I'm so excited for this Candyman sequel remake, or whatever they're doing with it. Is now that I know what direction they're sort of going in with this new version of Candyman and rewatching this one, I'm even more excited to watch the new Candyman going forward and how that'll tie into what some of the ideas they were expressing in this 92 version.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, speaking about the representation in this one, I think what's even cooler about this remake is that it's not just a person of color behind the camera. It's a woman of color behind the camera. And I think that's going to bring a whole different perspective. And I want to see more of that in these big studio horror films. Honestly, I think that alone makes the new Candyman an exciting prospect, you know?
Yeah. So I think Brian is back.
Am I back? Am I back again?
We said his name 5 times and he came back.
Yes.
One thing I do love about this movie is I think the cinematography in this film is just absolutely gorgeous. Like, I think one of my I think every time Tony Todd is on screen, that's just every shot is set up so marvelously in this movie. But I think my favorite shot is when Virginia Madsen's Helen is first exploring Cabrini Green and she climbs through the mouth of this Candyman mural. It's just a very iconic look and shot to this movie.
Yes, that took me by surprise. I had forgotten about that, and when she stepped into it, like, it kind of shocked me. Like, it almost made me jump in and of itself, because that's just such a tense scene anyway. It's just the way they shoot it and the way the music is playing. And yeah, seeing her step through the teeth, I was like, oh god, what's coming? You know, like, and that's another thing too. The set design in this film is just, I mean, when she goes into the bathroom right before she gets, assaulted, it's creepy. You can almost smell that bathroom. You can almost smell that bathroom as she's going through it. And it's just, oh man, it's nightmare fuel, just, especially as someone who's terrified of public bathrooms. So, I mean, dang. The set design on this was just insane.
Yeah, I dare to say I think this is a damn near perfect movie. I love every aspect of this movie so much. And one thing that I took away from it this time is, especially at the end of the movie, and we get the legend of Candyman and how he was having sexual relations with this white woman and gets his hand chopped off and is basically torched and killed by this mob, and we kind of get to see an inverse of that at the end of the movie. And I never took that away until this time around, where there's also a very similar thing where this group is setting to have a bonfire, and it was teased earlier in the movie, but we learn at the end that this bonfire is literally so they can get rid of Candyman.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I love the aspect of that because it is a complete inverse of the legend of the Candyman, because this time around the white woman is now delivering a black baby into the world. And it's a very different aspect of what happened in Candyman's previous life, where his child was taken out of this world by an angry mob.
Right.
Yep.
And there is also the racial relations between that and who, the color of the skin of the mobs from both times of that. And yeah, I think it's just a fascinating look at the myth of Candyman and how they do the inverse of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You bring up the ending, and there's a couple aspects of the ending that just did not sit well with me here. The first thing is that we basically have this entire movie basically centered around the fact that Candyman is kind of mythical. He's a living urban legend. The fact that he's coming from a different time, you figure he's supposed to be basically at this point hundreds, a couple hundred years old kind of thing, and the fact that when we get to that bonfire, he just is able and capable of dying. Like, what is it about this fire that is able to distinguish, to kill him? I don't see how that worked with what the character was.
I see it as, in a way,
For one,
I think Candyman is more, but I think Candyman is more than like an actual mythical being coming into to our world, like a Freddy Krueger is like coming out of the dream world into our world. Like this, I see Candyman is just pretty much a metaphor through this entire movie. But with that, to add the real world aspect to it, I think it's Helen is finally. This is the first time she's fighting back against Candyman. Mm-hmm. Because I think through all the other times there is a little bit of seduction to it, and whether it be like gender power and those scenes as well, where she's falling victim to a man. Like this time she's fighting back. She is not giving Candyman the power that he wants, the relationship he craves. He wants her to live in eternity and die with him again. And I think it's her taking away that power away from him and doing, like I said earlier, the inverse of what happened to him, where she's saving a child and bringing the child back into this world when a child was earlier in the film, it was taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is going into like real big spoilers here, but I mean, essentially she takes his place as the legend, is the way I read that ending. Is, I mean, she becomes the Candyman at the end, and so to me, his whole thing was he wanted to be remembered, his followers, he wanted his congregation, and she was taking that away from him by exposing him as just an urban legend, basically. And the final nail in the coffin was her saving that baby and thus becoming a legend herself, right? So I guess that's kind of how I read that, is, yeah, kind of like Casey, the fire was more a metaphorical thing, not necessarily like a physical burning of his body, but just a burning of his memory almost,
Which you actually bring up the other slight issue that I kind of had with the ending of it here, is the fact that there is that, as you would maybe even put it, the metaphorical passing of the torch from him to her, to the point where we talk about the end scene with the husband, is the fact that what would him cause to say that he needs to repeat her name into the mirror 5 times for her to show up? What stems that? What brings this up? What causes that to the point where now that she is this per se urban legend, to the point where it's like, okay, if you're ending the movie like that, then where was Candyman 2, the birth of Helen, or whatever the case is? Like, you kill off one.
That's studio being like, well, we can't make money off anyone but Tony Todd as Candyman.
Yeah.
Then the ending was completely useless and pointless.
Well, no, not well. You have to look at this
Not
movie
if you
as a
haven't
standalone.
watched any of the sequels.
Yeah.
Says the guy that hasn't even watched the third one he didn't know about until 2 hours ago.
I've
Wait,
not.
were we
I've not
supposed
either.
to-
I've not either. I heard it's not great, but we'll talk about it at the end. I think the second one is pretty good. But with that ending, with her becoming this new legend, the thing I take away from that is almost, in a way, she has already defeated Candyman, but also I think a little bit of what Candyman was saying has also come true, where he has wanted her to live in eternity the way he has. But now she is now the new urban legend of her apartment building. I would assume now this time is she'll be the one that the kids are daring each other to say in the mirror 3 times or 5 times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason her husband says it at that point is he's beginning to feel guilt because presumably so they have cleared her name now because she saved the baby. She brought the baby back to the mother, but that leads a lot of open questions at the end. But with that, that's the way I take away from it, that she has kind of been redeemed, and especially with him seeing how that community rallied around her and by showing up to her funeral in droves. I think he is beginning to realize what a astounding human and what a great person he had in his life at that time with Helen. And now this time he was not doing the dare of saying Candyman 5 times. It was just saying her name 5 times. And maybe it was a little bit of he knew the urban legend and was like, maybe I can just see her one last time or get one last look at her. But this time she comes, and again, much like Candyman, he wasn't necessarily a bad guy. He was in a bad situation beforehand. But this time around, he's coming back with a vengeance. And that's the way I take it now with Helen. She's coming back with a vengeance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are we swaying you? We're trying so hard. I
don't know. I will give you this. For as much crap as I've given for the sake of going through the when I did my Friday the 13th rewatch, is I will give this I will put this over for the sake of like an origin movie, if you will. I will definitely put this over the first Friday the 13th.
As a Friday the 13th stan, that entire series together can't hold a candle to Candyman.
No.
Thank
Not
goodness.
at all.
Thank God. Because I tell you what, I still remember the glaring look I got from Dominic when I made the comment about, like, yeah, they're not great.
No, but Candyman I is on a completely different level than nearly any other slasher movie. I mean, the only ones I would put up towards the Candyman level for slashers, the first Nightmare on Elm Street and maybe Halloween.
What about I Know What You Did Last Summer? It's the guy with the hook.
I Know What You Did Last Summer can go eat a bag of farts compared to Candyman.
I'm just poking fun at the fact that he had a hook.
Yeah,
he did.
No. I don't know. Like, I think the biggest Tony Todd makes this movie what it is. I mean, without his performance, this movie, like, it's a great movie in general, but it's not as great without his performance in it. Like, if you would have had anybody else but Tony Todd in this, I don't know if it would be considered the classic that it is. I think it rests very squarely on his shoulders, and it's...
Casey, tell Sam what you were saying to me just before he jumped on.
Yeah, before we get to final thoughts, some trivia. quickly. Eddie Murphy was wanted for the role of Candyman in this movie. Fortunately, that did not happen.
Even as for much crap as I want to give this movie right now, compared to you two, no.
No, that wouldn't work at all.
And then also, I just have to bring this up because this is one of the most infamous behind the scene tidbits of Candyman. Tony Todd actually negotiated a bonus of $1,000 for every bee sting he suffered with the bees in the mouth scene. So he was bit 23 times during that. And so he got an extra $23,000.
I would have been like $5,000 a piece.
I was about to say, not worth it. Not worth it.
But
that scene just freaks me out. Could you
imagine if that's how he figured out he was allergic to bees?
Oh my god!
Like that's the kind of thing where like, let's go do this test first before we go do this test.
Right. I'm sorry. There's not enough money in the world for me to do something like that. There's just not.
I would have to concur.
This was also only a $6 million budget on this movie. So for him to negotiate that's pretty impressive.
It looks great for a $6 million movie. Like,
it does.
That surprises the hell out of me, honestly.
And then another thing that I always forget while watching this movie, I forget Ted Raimi is in it.
That was the very first thing that right at the very beginning of the movie, I'm like, that's it.
Did I miss him? Was he in the dinner scene?
He's at the very beginning. He's Billy at the very, very beginning.
Oh yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Where the girlfriend's trying to summon Candyman.
Yep.
That's Ted Raimi.
That's Ted Raimi. Yep.
Yeah.
I forgot.
All right.
The rest of the movie is so good. I completely forgot about the cold open.
Yeah.
I would like to point out, just for the sake of argument, that at least $6 million in '92 is about a $12 million movie nowadays. So it's still right on par.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to our final thoughts on Mr. Candyman.
Knock it off.
Well,
Sam's not gonna be able to sleep again.
I already used the one F-bomb we get for a PG-13 rating, so I guess I'll just have to say Candyman slaps. But if you've listened to me on any other podcast that I've done, you know the word that I would actually use. This movie's amazing. Like I said, I had trouble sleeping last night. I
slept like a baby.
I'm gonna
maybe I'm just
Blu-ray.
Maybe I'm just desensitized to horror films after basically listening to you guys talk about them and the fact that I'm just old and codgery at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're like Robert De Niro and all of his grandpa comedies.
God damn you, well, young can't hear you.
All right, Brian, final thoughts on Candyman.
I'd say for the sake of performances in the movie, I don't think anybody else other than Tony Todd could play Candyman. If you haven't seen it, I'd at least recommend seeing it, but depending on your affliction towards certain types of horror movies, or just horror movies in general, it could potentially be kind of a hit or miss.
Since Sam didn't say it, I'll say it. Candyman fucks.
Sure, now we got our rating. Nice job.
We're getting the same rating as the goddamn movie. I don't care. Candyman is a masterpiece. I think it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It is easily one of the best of the 90s. It is, in terms of quality, as far as slasher movies go, I don't know if another one can touch it.
Yeah.
Just based on what it is saying and doing in this movie. And it is expertly directed. One of the greatest scores ever. Fantastic performances. So many social undertones in this movie. Yeah, I love every single bit of Candyman. I think it is a perfect movie. It is my favorite Barker movie. And with Brian's thoughts on this, I am very scared to talk about other Clive Barker movies.
I'll be
this is the most
listening.
accessible one.
This is the sensible one? Is that what you said?
Yeah. No, this is the most accessible one.
Oh, accessible. No, it wasn't. This is the one I actually had to pay to rent for because I couldn't get it anywhere else.
Yeah, well, it wasn't.
Not what I meant by accessible.
It was on Netflix until about, I don't know,
until
2 weeks
until
ago,
this
maybe.
month. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh crap. Well, I guess I missed that window, but
I will say, for the sake of Rotten Tomatoes, it's mid-range. It's at a 62 for audience score. So I would say at this point right now, we're actually right where the audience would be sitting. Because if you figure you two are in the positive, I'm kind of in the negative. That's about a 66.
Would you give this movie a negative score, though?
I wouldn't give it as positive as a review as like you two would do.
What would you give it out of 5?
Give it 4.5 stars? Because that's what I gave it.
Yeah, no.
5.
No.
5 stars.
Are you guys going to try to...
High five!
This is what happens when you figure out how that you can actually have multiple people on a video call.
All right. Brian, what would you give it out of 5? Sam, you gave it 4.5. I give it a 5.
Nice.
3.5, maybe.
That's more positive than negative.
Yeah, that's a positive rating.
That's 100. That's 100% on the backlot-o-meter.
It is.
I mean, I'm not going to argue the certain aspects of the film that are definitely showing in the good quality. So, and I have a problem with the whole, like, even just rating even like a 1 star, or like I have to really, really dislike a film to even give it like 2 stars. Like, and that's saying something because I've done that to a couple Bond films. But it's the fact that Tony Todd absolutely carries this for how much he's even in the film, that I think even just alone justifies, at least middle of the road 3. So.
All right, so go check out the 5-star Candyman as we are nearing the 2-hour mark of this 100th episode of the Backlot 605 podcast. It wouldn't be the show if me and Brian did not disagree on the movie, at least a little bit. It would not be our show.
This is true.
But yeah, we're going to continue our Clive Barker miniseries throughout the month of October, so be on the lookout for that. But first of all, let's get to some of the plugs of what we have going on here on Backlot. First up, you can go subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Amazon Prime, and go check us out on YouTube to see our lovely faces on the YouTube.
On the YouTube. You were there. There you go.
There it is. You can also check us out on backlot605.com. You can find our latest movie news, reviews, articles, and anything else Backlot 605 related there, including our weekly Coming Soon article. You can go check out some of Sam's horror film reviews up on backlot605.com.
There may be a glowing Hubie Halloween one coming, depending on how much I actually like that movie.
I hope you give it the same rating as Candyman.
Dun, dun, dun.
I hope I do too.
And then you can also go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/backlot605. You can join our $1, our $3, or our $5 tiers to help out the show and get some extra bonus content for what we have going on. And a special thanks to our first 2 patrons of Backlot, including Mr. Logan Schwanke, previous guest of the show and previous host of Anime Anatomy, and me and Sam's Slashlat 605 and former Killer Countdown co-host, Mr. Blake Ginnathan. So thank you guys for being our first couple patrons as we get that off the ground and hitting the road here.
That just goes to show that how much they support us.
Yes. Brian, where can they find us on the social medias?
As long as my Vanna White above me here can start pointing in the right direction here, you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we like to basically post what's going on and the reviews and links and all that fun stuff. You can also check us out on the South Dakota Film Community Group on Facebook. Join the conversation. I'd like to hear from what you guys think about movies, things, news going on, all that fun stuff, and definitely look forward to hearing from everybody.
Yes, and Kiefer's Mullets, where can they find you online and follow you and your doings?
Well, pretty soon we're going to be starting Slashlot up, and so you'll be able to find me there. You can find me on Instagram at SlenzArt, SLENZ art. I do a bunch of horror art and stuff like that. And also just chat with me on the South Dakota Film Community Group page, because we have a lot of fun there. I love it.
I fully expect a Candyman drawing in the next week.
If I can do it justice, I'll post one.
Please do. Yeah, so yeah, once again, that is Sam Lenz, the former co-host of the Killer Countdown, the upcoming host of Slashlat 605. And if you have not yet, please go check out our top 20 1980s horror films countdown. We did this over this past week, and that is still up on Backlat on superconline.com. You can check out the replay there, and we will be posting it to our social medias as well. So go check out what we ranked as the best horror films of the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we ever do the 90s, I think Candyman makes it.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yes.
And I will say the same thing as I said for the 80s. I am not qualified for that. I at least own that. I am not qualified for that.
All right, let's wrap this thing up as we are over 2 hours long here. This is one of the longest episodes we have ever had. I blame Mr. Sam Lenz for that.
Yeah, I talk a lot.
Yeah, that's all right. It's our 100th.
So do you.
We can be long. But next week we are going to continue our Clive Barker series as we talk Nightbreed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be talking about Nightbreed with, I think he's the number one Nightbreed fan in the world, if I do say so myself. We're bringing him back. This is Mr. Corey Nels Jacobson back on the Backlot 605 show to gush about Nightbreed. He mentioned this movie on the very first episode he ever appeared on and has mentioned it on multiple occasions to us. So when we thought Nightbreed, we thought Corey Jacobson. So he will be back on the show next week.
Cool.
Yeah, so that has been the 100th episode of the Backlot 605 podcast. For Sam Lenz, Brian Mensing, I'm Casey Calderman. We'll see you next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.